Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. Today is round two of our roundtable. And we will just keep going round and around. Yeah, and today I have a huge panel joining us today. There's going to be a couple more guests that I'm hoping that will be definitely coming on to our roundtable, maybe in a little while. And if not, it'll be on our next roundtable. But today I'm going to start with, I have Tom joining me. I have Joseph joining me, and I have MJ here, and I have Alan. And we're just waiting for two other guests. That will be Dan and Cassandra. If they are able to join on, that would be awesome. But with that being said, we're going to continue on where we left off on the round one of our roundtable. I'm going to start with Tom first. How important it is that we need to get the income out to people. And I know there's a lot of different viewpoints on how we get to that. But how important it is. I mean, money. Money.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of confusion out there still, and I've seen both on the left and the right about basic income and the subject of welfare, and how basic income, well, we have a welfare state, or basic income is the same as welfare, and Joseph can probably can speak to this as well. That as I've said before, basic income, the difference for me, that one of the differences is you can lose welfare, which is one of the disincentives in welfare, which is that it has these I call them invisible tripwires, where both you have a high marginal tax rate that makes it, like, as Hugh Segal said, the late Senator Hugh Segal, that you're taxed back dollar for dollar in welfare, and disability is a little bit better, but there's still that kind of feeling of, oh, I don't want to do the wrong thing, and then all of a sudden I've lost that little bit that I have. And so there's that. And then there's also just the fact that, like, I want people to have the feeling of security unconditionally, that's just there as a right, as a rule, and that, of course, like, Brendan said, and I've said, the money doesn't disappear. It flows right back into the economy, which makes everyone better off around you as well. This is what they've seen in pilot after pilot. Like in Ontario, there was that one, what was it, in Lindsay, Ontario, the place, Fresh Fuel, where they saw not only were they supported by the basic income, but they started to see all those new customers coming in because they had money to spend. So it's a lot like it's different to welfare because of the same things that, Guy Standing of left-wing economists and Milton Friedman, the famous right-wing economists, have both said the same things. Like Milton said, once people get on, we make it entirely impossible for them to get off, because they have to leapfrog to a really amazing job. Otherwise, it's not even worth trying. So you want to make it so that people can get off gradually, and they, and with there's actually a disability advocate named on Twitter. Her name is Miss Design Diva, and she said it really well as a person now on disability. Was that she had an invisible disability, and so it took her ages to get off welfare onto disability. So while a person's waiting, like, they should be above the poverty line, not down here at like 900 or whatever the hell it is in BC, and I believe it's worse in other provinces as well. When, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the poverty line is far higher than 2,000 or 2,200, but they should be sitting at 900. That's crazy. And in a situation where you're worse off for trying, like I say. So,
oh, there's so many people that are that are disabled, that are on income assistance, that are pending because all the red tape, all the bureaucratic garbage that goes along with it. And they just kick them down when they're down, and they say, well, are you looking for a job? Can you prove it? Show me the employer's addresses, their phone numbers, etc. And I mean, those the people that are already suffering. I mean, the system actually is designed to keep them down.
But apparently the system is not discriminatory. Because there's been so many people that have tried, including me, and I keep being told it's not discriminatory, Neil. It's just unfair. It's not.
It's like I've listened to the other episodes, and like you say, it's like it's not discriminatory. It discriminates to everyone. It's like
that's right.
It's not discriminatory.
Hang on.
If you show up to their office and you're in a wheelchair and you have 500 documents from your doctor, you're still going to wait 2.5 years.
And so who would take a risk of work? And like the stuff that I've learned about, like it was a posting today about rent, and I posted from CBC, and I put underneath it, more people need to learn what rentier capitalism is. That's why I keep trying to push that stuff out there, because it's like there's so much going on, and it's been kind of like this perfect storm, like I'm talking about last time.
For capitalism.
Since like we went from less paternalism to more paternalism with the neoliberal movement, and that's what brought in the hardcore thing, and it's all over the world. Like in the UK, it's universal credit, which they said it was designed to be cruel. In America, it was Clinton saying this is the end of welfare, and they brought in TANF, which is Scott Santons can tell you it's just terrible. And then here in Canada, we had what's his name? The late Jack Layton, his book on homelessness, which is absolutely awesome. Everyone should read that. He explains how we used to be the leader. You used to be the leader of the world for affordable housing. Now we got the UN coming at us for the fact of our housing. And it was all in the same period, like all over the Western world, same story, So
there was a report today that the housing in BC actually was at a negative over the last few years, because they sold a piece. Was it Manitoba or was it BC? I think it was Manitoba. But they sold a piece of like an apartment building to the private sector that negated all of the wins they had for years in affordable housing units.
And like my friend who works here, he volunteers with great people. His name's Kim Hines, and he I think Brent, you've talked to him, and he was showing me showing everybody on his channel. It's his living and lived experience of homelessness network, Lejon, and he was talking about how like these people that are homeless, including Indigenous elders, we're in the middle of the TRC thing, Indigenous elders, and how they go to them, they sweep their stuff. By law, and police would sweep their stuff, take it over here, make them sign something and say, you signed this. If you sign this, you can never come back to this spot again. It's like, just it's like, and there's the comments being enclosed, ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly it's like how Friday Chris would say, like,
One of the things that really concerns me is this whole idea, and now I think it's happening in China right now, but it's coming down the pipeline. This digital identification. Now I don't walk around with a tinfoil hat on my head, but I see so many implications for control. Like you got a digital ID, which means if you're disabled, you can't go to the LCBO. We're not going to let you go to a casino. We're not going to let you buy X, Y, and Z items. If you do these things, your amount goes down. Or I don't know how they would do it, but I could see I could see the digital ID becoming a prison without walls.
No, we have accessibility laws in Canada to prevent that. We must have a physical passport. You can't just have a digital passport. There's 200 and change companies in the world, or countries in the world. Not all of them have the technology to read a digital passport. A lot of them, you still have to be manually walk into their airport, and they need to inspect it manually because they don't have a computer to check it. you can't just force upon an economy a digital ID system. The accessibility that we would need for that would be paramount. People that are disabled, that are blind, you would need a copy that they can't see.
Well, I could see it being a card, unfortunately.
Well,
You're always going to have a physical form of ID, but the digital form of ID will make it easier, certainly easier and more accessible for people. But I doubt that they're going to ever get transformed into just a digital. It's the same thing as the currency. They're not going to have just digital currency. We're always going to have a paper fiat.
Well, it's like, most of the currency that's actually used, over roughly 95% plus, is actually digital already, right? Quite literally.
True, but
right?
They cannot eliminate the physicality of it without having an accommodation.
Right, and
we don't have that yet.
It's like with the digital ID and the digital currency, the other talk is the whole idea of this social credit score. I know it sounds futuristic, but and science, sci-fi, but the talk is out there, and if they go this route, it will be a digital prison.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
already bad enough for the people that are disabled, right? Yeah. For those of us that are on disability, and there's a lot of people out there that with severe mental disabilities that wouldn't be able to grasp their head around all of this type of stuff. So I mean, this is where
Canadian demographics are leading more towards more people retiring than actual younger generation. We've already passed it. We're already got more retired than working age. I highly doubt that Canada is going to transition into a digital only society because we have too many people who can't grasp that yet. Another 15, 20 years from now, maybe, but not now.
Otherwise, there's too many hoops to keep jumping through.
Well, the funny thing is, my worker is demanding that I give her all my notice of assessments on CRA and all my bank stuff going back to 2020 to see if I'm still eligible for ODSP.
Terrible.
That's awful.
And my worry is that what if I was to the point where I could barely navigate Facebook, let alone try and figure out how to get onto my CRA. So with things like digital currency, where you have to jump through these hoops, especially as someone with intellectual disabilities or sight or hearing, this is just it's a scary slippery slope.
Well, here's the thing for you, Alan. Imagine if in some cases, I don't know in Ontario, I know in BC, some recipients, PWD recipients, can still get their checks by physical snail mail, right? Canada Post. A lot of the workers across the country in different provinces, they all want to go automated, right? So have it automatically deposit. CRA wants it that way too. It makes it a lot easier. But here's the thing for your worker. Right. If you had a check given to you physically, right, and you don't have a bank account, you went to Money Mart, which I don't tell people don't go to Money Mart to cash your check. But imagine if you did. So she wants to have a whole bunch of statements from a bunch of months back or years. Say, I don't have a bank account. What is she going to do? Or he or she?
Yeah.
They actually can tell whether you have a bank account or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a big brother watch.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible though. I mean, it's like the old saying when I used to talk on the show a lot about this. How much change do you have, Brent, in your pocket right now? I got 25 cents. Remember we had the pennies? I got a nickel. Oh, hang on. I think I got a penny, but it's stuck under my wallet. Just give me a sec. What do you mean under your wallet? Yeah, because somebody's jabbing me in my leg here. Oh, wait a minute, that's my keys. Oh yeah, there's a penny there. Yeah, here you are. I threw it on the desk. What's that? I go, a penny. She goes, penny for what? I go, a penny for your thoughts. And then I lean forward, right? She goes, get away from my stapler, please. I go, what? I wanted to stick the documents together. The paper bills. I got a $20 bill and a $5 bill. I want to staple it. She goes, whoa. But I mean, I was being sarcastic to her, like making a point, like, why are you doing this? Like, there's no need for this garbage. And they stopped going forward.
Well, all I know is that I've got a report that was done for the DSO by an organization called Professor psychologists, the whole bet.
Mhm.
And if my worker wants to say, "Oh, I don't think you're eligible for ODSP," I'm pulling the report, and if I will go over her head without even blinking an eye, I will be like, "This is harassment." I've been on ODSP since '96. The moment I get a job, I'm suddenly under the microscope because
Oh, well,
I
it's,
fall, like
I was just
stand
reading
up
a,
and
I was just reading a report by the city of Calgary. They actually did a report about in regards to age, and one of the things that they actually talked about is the fact that the rules around, and this is in every province, it's just that this one was commissioned here by this our city council, that it's working when somebody goes to work, it's too punitive. They basically said it was too punitive because of what they put you through for one, and how the deductions are managed and the microscope you put, that it's too punitive for a lot of people to work even if they want to. And so it actually is a deterrent. And
absolutely is. They
it is, and we got people.
They set you up for fail automatically.
Yeah, well, here, like the first $1,072 is 100% exempt, and then everything after that up to 2009 is 50%. So if you made the full 2009, you'd get about 325 or 350 around there taken off. But most people, because the math is just too overwhelming for them, they're afraid to make over the 1,072 because it's going, even that small deduction in the grand scheme of things, it puts them into, it's trauma, right? It's just the trauma of having to figure out how much of my check are they going to take as is my,
Well, yeah, and it's a worrisome, right? I mean, it's a constant worry that people have as a person with disability, already having to deal with their disability as it is, without having to worry about or how much are they going to deduct off. I think it should just be unlimited amount of earnings a person wants to or can make. Just let them make it. I mean, yeah.
Well, and how much does a person living, if you've been eligible for a disability program, how many people actually, when they start to work, manage to make enough that they could actually give up? I mean, it's so few and far between. It just makes no sense, right?
Yeah, I know, and because there are employers like they'll say, well, I can only work so many hours, otherwise I'm going to start clawing that off, and they'll say, okay, so you're limiting yourself down, or it's just so much red tape. It's bureaucratic stuff, and it's just
they could save so much time too by saying, listen, if you have a part-time job, or you make in Ontario anyway, you make the allotted $1,000 or over, then you have to report, because it's a moot point if you're under the $1,000 threshold anyway. And they would be able to carve out so much time wasted on reporting and whatever. You get your T5 from ODSP. You let your worker know you're working, and then you tell them, "Hey, I got laid off, but I haven't gone over the $1,000 mark,
right?
So
right.
I haven't reported it."
But here's another too, Dan.
We have annual reporting here, like, so they can put you on, like, if you're working every month, then you're just monthly. But if you're a sporadic worker, they'll put you on something called annual reporting. Now, the government we got in place kind of changed what that means, but it used to mean that you only had to report your earnings once a year, and then it would be deducted on the year moving forward, spread out over the whole 12 months. So if you only worked 2 months, but you made $5,000 in that 2 months, then you wouldn't have to be deducted or miss a month, because they would just spread that and divide it up over the 12 months.
In BC, they did that for going back years now, but it was done that way for a while, where PWD could, if you had a seasonal job and you made up to like $7,000-8,000, and say, oh, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months, just for instance, but the rest of the year you it was seasonal, you wouldn't work. Yeah, now basically you've now made your quota. You can't, even if you pick up another part-time job, they would be 100% clawed off you for the rest of those months. Yeah, so that was quickly changed.
I don't know what the overdraft Like if you get, they say they look at my amount, they say, according to your bank statements and assessments, we figure you've got $1,000 overpayment. Do they just take like a certain amount off your check each month, or do they hold your amount until it's paid off?
ODSP is not allowed to garnish more than 3% of your basic check each month, and then they just keep applying that 3% to your overpayment balance until it's paid off.
Oh.
Okay, because
So
I'm
So
only
it's
I'm only
basically for a
receiving.
person on ODSP is like, I think it's like $35 is the most that can be garnished or something like that.
I'm my 90% of my rent goes directly to my management company. I get
Right.
whatever's left over, so it's like $180 or something.
We have two
Which is jack shit.
hands
Yeah.
raised, Brent, for a while.
okay.
We got Tom and we got MJ. I don't know
MJ's
who was first.
so
MJ was first. Okay.
Okay, MJ, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm listening to these stories, and this is why, you know, I came to the point of universally available basic income or guaranteed basic income or whatever it's going to be designed as. You know, I mean, probably Tom and I are probably almost on the same page of just coming at it from different directions, you know, and the idea here is to eliminate this type of abuse and this type of nonsense of having to go and prove your worth to go and get assistance from the government. I mean, it's, you know, it's the same thing as if, you know, when you get to 65, whether or not you're going to get enough in CPP, or whether or not, you know, your unemployment, whether or not you quit or fired, or you're injured on WCB. It's all of these things. They sit here and they create all of this nonsense to sit here and put us through hoops to basically torture and abuse us to some point in purpose. I don't know. You know, to me, I just think that eliminating this nonsense and just saying, okay, take it or leave it. Here's X amount of money. This is what you get per month. Also, there's the option to be able to go and purchase the group health insurance, which will cover, you know, basically it'll be like Blue Cross, because in BC, I don't know if you know, Brent, we are covered under Blue Cross. They just go and make it so that we have to jump through hoops and to go and get the actual support. So they've put a line of defense in between us and Blue Cross to actually go and get, you know, to use the insurance. So, you know, to me, it's like, let's get rid of all these hoops. Let's get rid of all this stuff. You know, here's an option to go and get insurance, you know, 20, 40, 50 bucks or whatever it be, a part of the big group plan for everybody. We get you all on board. We get this down to a science where everybody has insurance. They can get the support they need. And, you know, if there's stuff that won't be covered by insurance, then the government just says, fine, we'll cover it. Because the insurance side of things will cover a lot more and a lot of stuff versus, you know, having for the government to have to jump on board and say, yeah, we'll do it. So once we get all of this stuff dealt with and got out of the way, the idea to me is absolute simplification. And this is the problem that we have, is there's just too many hoops.
Well, that's the thing, MJ, is, you know, as we all keep hearing from governments, from whatever angle it is, whatever party it is, from whatever level it is, oh, there's more to do. When we tell them that the system is completely, you know, wiped, it needs to be completely restarted, a reboot, you know, God forbid. But, you know, logical, you know, things that we say that make sense. They say, oh, there's more to do, or we have your back. Don't worry. Yeah. You know,
right. Right. They never do. So, I mean, this is to me, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, you know, listening to these stories, and I'm like, this is where a guaranteed income of some sort, or universal available basic income, or whatever we call it or come to, we just get this out of the way. Get rid of these people that are there just to go and make things even more difficult for us. I mean, and I think if we solve these problems this way, I think we'd actually see a lot more people that are happier. And for people that are on disability, maybe that would reduce the amount of prescriptions they actually have to take for being depressed or whatever, because they would have less stress and less worry, because they know they're going to have a good amount of money coming in and it's guaranteed, right? You know, and studies have shown that guaranteed income reduces the amount of depression in people. So if we can reduce the amount of depression, that means we're going to also be saving on healthcare. Yes. You know, so that means our healthcare costs now inevitably go down, you know, so we are doing 2 for 1. right? This is a twofer here. Come on.
Yeah.
How can you not go
Yeah.
and say yes to that?
Two for one is
there's-
great, except the pizza.
Yeah, you know, and
Don't
that,
touch that stuff.
well, and that kind of blends into, you know, it's going to reach over to Alan here too. I mean, who else had their hands up?
Well, let's
here?
go to Tom first, because Tom had his
Tom
hand up,
first,
and then we'll
and
go
then-
to
Yeah,
Alan.
like
Yeah.
going off what MJ said, because
Yeah,
we're
and then-
pretty much in agreement. But
I'm gonna
like
Alan after you. Sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
okay, like if we started, well, I'll take the hand thing down. Let's see. I started the thing with talking about how, you know, like, well, isn't we have a welfare state, and some people say basic income and welfare are the same thing, which of course they're not. Welfare was designed back in the day when horses were used to deliver goods. I mean, it's been that long since we've had this thing that's only been made worse through the neoliberal market fundamentalist movement, which happened after the whole, what we were talking about last time with Expo 86. We now have the precariat kind of reality where people have jobs that are a lot more kind of like, shall we say, fluid, or like it's like you have this one for only a little time, and then this goes away, and then that happens. And the welfare state wasn't built for that kind of industry. It was built for the kind of industrial world of before that it's just gone. And we were talking about before. Now it's a while back now, but the situation with the social credit now. I kind of had a front row seat to watching all this kind of stuff arrive back in February 2021. And that was because Trudeau did the Emergencies Act, which of course freaked everyone out. And what pisses me off is how these anti-UBI guys who already believed in the kind of New World Order conspiracy theory from 1965 just stapled basic income to it, going, haha, got them. And that's basically what happened. As of that point, all of a sudden, because I'm always looking on Instagram for new content, I'm always looking on YouTube for new content. This stuff started popping up like crazy, because they were all sharing it with each other. And it's like, with this, you know, it's like, think about how things were back in 86 versus how they were in 2021 when it comes to people's fears, when it comes to how they feel about government. You know, like this is something that
TikTok, it's way worse.
Yeah, like there's a blog, Tragedy of Trust, which references something Scott Santon said, which references something that Nixon's administration, Sean Patrick Monahan, said, we'll have a breakdown in trust of society towards government, towards institutions. And that's exactly what's happened. So literally, we need basic income to start that trust again. And that's what happened in Finland, where a basic income was put in. And one of the things they saw was that trust increased. Because all of a sudden you're being invested in. Like, we're starting society based on trust, not suspicion, which is, you know, like, start that process and we can start coming back. And the other thing I remembered from listening to
it sounds like another Billy Joel song.
Yeah.
It's a matter of trust.
Oh yeah.
I like the parallel that you used there, Tom, about about Expo 86 versus 2021, because it kind of reminds me of the McBarge, and you know, kind of it reminded me of a post Joseph I read about the McDouble cheeseburger.
Oh God.
Yeah.
My first job was McDonald's Mount Newton back in '92, but yeah, like I did a blog about this, but I just had something.
Oh, grilled cheese.
Oh yeah, like I mean, like who would write a song like "Future's So Bright, I Gotta Wear Shades Now"? Like, you know, we had this kind of like when I was a kid in Langley. I went to Langley Central, but we had the library and I remember this book of like the future and flying cars, and we'll get on it. It was like Back to the Future with the floating skateboards. And now it's like, it's all this kind of like, oh my God, the future is going to be this way. And you know, it's like
miles per hour.
Yeah, like Hilda Latour of Bien said, like, look, if a basic income is all about unconditionality, programmable money is not unconditionality and should be completely rejected. And like, it would not make a country better for having that kind of crap to begin with. You'd make your situation worse, and then you'd have to deal with the fact you've made your situation worse. And for like, like when if the wealthy and powerful actually wanted basic income all along, well, what the hell is it? What's taking them so long? In which case, the idea's been around since Bertrand Russell in 1917. So yeah, to me, it's this idea that they're going to introduce it to control you. It's just like, oh no, you know, like
Yeah.
but what's
Robots
interesting,
are coming.
yeah, there was one other point I wanted to make, which I remember, I wrote this one down. There was a country, it was from the recent Bien Congress in Seoul. One guy was talking about how you could have two different kinds of like for emergency basic incomes, like when we had the pandemic, either dial up or on off. And on off is what we had with CERB, which was a total disaster. I mean, like, you know, it had good things about it. There were people who benefited from CERB,
Right.
but it was like there was all this kind of who got served, now we got to claw it back, blah 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 blah.
Well, we'll just get it
Versus dial up, which is where you can have a basic income. Like, everybody's already signed up. Like, you think about, like, in BC we had the we had the BC recovery benefit where everyone got $500, but it took months to get everyone their $500.
Yeah.
So if everyone's already signed up on their basic income, like basic income is a right that's there, whether it's GLBI or whatever, it's just there. Like GLBI, maybe it's down here, but you could go, right, everyone needs it. Up it comes. You know, like Evelyn Forget said it. If we had a basic income, public servants would have had a lot more sleep. Because you could have, okay, everybody, let's go. And everyone just goes up. Done.
See, here's something to think about, Dom, is how much money are we already spending on all of the benefit programs, right, all across the country? Like, we have 13 provincial jurisdictions, then we have the federal jurisdiction for 14 jurisdictions overlapping on multiple of the same exact programs, right?
Evelyn said it's like 125 programs or something like that. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, and then you take a look at the cost to administrate all of that, and it's like, well, if that was all going directly to the people, we wouldn't need all of this. And if, you know, to me, simplification is the best move here. I mean, and here's something to think about. A lot of these people that would be working in government, they're working for less than they would receive in the private sector for the same or similar job, right? Which means in the private sector, they'd be making more money, which means they'd be paying more taxes into the system. Right. So, I mean, there's a double benefit in changing this around and simplification of all these benefit programs, because yes, we can say, well, there'd be free training for those that need it, because, you know, being good Canadians, you don't throw, you know, we don't throw people out with the bathwater as per se. We try to help everyone the best we can. And if they need to be retrained, so be it. You know, I mean, we should do what we can here. And this is where, with all these programs, student loans and all the rest of this stuff that's all here, you know, all these benefit programs that are all over the place, bumped into everything, just one program with the option to take it or leave it, or go and take it at this amount of money, and you can ramp it up to a maximum of this amount of money if you truly need that much money, right? So if you only need $2,000, you can say, oh, I want $2,000, or if your maximum, say, we'll say $4,000, you can take that, right? I mean, either way.
Well, you can guarantee that with the cost of groceries and whatever, that you're probably going, if you want to eat healthy and not end up in emergency due to lack of diet or whatever, you're looking at probably 225 a week. Times that by 4 weeks, like that's kind of given.
Well, that's what
and they're like, they're going, well, you got $300. Best of luck to you in the food banks. But half the time you go to the food banks and they're not. They don't want. They're so low that.
And all they got is garbage food to give you.
I just want to quickly pass the food banks. I've talked about this before, and I've shared this online, so I don't, you know, my loved one has diabetes. She has sodium intolerance, and what's the other one? We both have lactose intolerance. I have a more aggressive version of IBS than she does. What food? Oh yeah, and she also has allergy to tomatoes. What food bank food would we have? Like, you know, this is where having your own money is huge.
Chemical noodles.
But, exactly. But it's like, as Senator Hugh Siegel said, I just looked this up. The cost of keeping someone unhoused is $54,144 per year. The cost of keeping someone incarcerated is $125,466 per year. The cost of poverty is not free. It's actually double a full tilt UBI.
Well, exactly. You know, and I'm maxing out at $4. You know, I've done the math and maxing at $4,000, right? Because I mean, when you take a look at the cost of living, the cost of groceries, cost of gasoline, I mean, is, I don't know if, I don't really think we need the carbon tax. I mean, personally, it's not helping keep our groceries low because.
Well, it's not progressive enough. It's supposed to be you tax the money and it's a Pagovian tax. You tax the money and then it's paid back. Which some people go, well, that sounds crazy. The idea is that, like, it's almost like with smoking, where it's like, smoking's money was heavily taxed. Like, the actual cost of it is way down here. But it makes you go, well, maybe I won't buy cigarettes. Or with the car thing, it's like, maybe I'll save up for electric, or I'll put in some solar panels or whatever. So that's the idea behind it. But the problem is it has all these other things where it hits the groceries and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But that's another thing where also you get renteism in there as well. So, but yeah.
That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to get Alan's take on regarding RGI for housing, because it's related to income. Because if you have less money going to your landlord, I mean, from the person's point of view, and more money in your pocket, because you're going to put it back in the economy. And at the end of the day, that the landlord's still going to get their money because they're going to get that subsidy amount. I'll get Alan's view on that. Then she'll get Joseph's view, and then I'll move over to Cassandra and get her take on the rent portion. I know Cassandra we'll be talking about that part. Rent, the shelter. So I'll dive into you in a little bit on that one. But first, I'll go to Ellen.
Quickly, I don't have long, guys.
Yeah, okay.
I have put my hand up because I don't have long,
okay.
And I do have a bit of an announcement that I want to make.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No,
and I hate, because I'm loving this conversation and I just want to stay here because I have so much to say on it.
Okay.
But as of yesterday, I am technically homeless.
I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Wow.
My landlord's been kind. He's given me an extra week or so to get my stuff out and into storage. In 5 months, I put in over 24 rental applications to market housing. Not one of them has called any of my references, and I've got excellent references, like bar none references. Like most people in professional careers don't have the kinds of references I have, and my landlord will give me a good reference. And I've been in my home long term 7, 8 years. Yeah. And not one of these applications has vetted my application, called in my landlord or any of my other references. I'm on as many subsidized housing, including Calgary housing. And there's just nothing. I just had a conversation with one of our city councilors and just wrote a letter to the mayor, because the mayor, while we were having our housing strategy marathon hearing, near the end, put a motion forward to put up to allot some land and put up temporary modular housing for families with children. Right. And if you look at the I don't know who that is calling me, but they can leave a message. If you do, I just looked up the statistics. The people that are the most housing insecure in Canada are lone person households. Yep. Lone person households are more than 2 times as likely as households with more than one person to be in core housing need or at risk of homelessness or homeless. And statistics around women is women and gender diverse people. We can't get accurate numbers, because whereas when you look at, if you get the numbers from the shelters, it's mostly men, but most of the shelters are for men, and the ones for women are mostly based on if you're fleeing domestic violence and not to do with homelessness. And
that needs to change.
Most women tend to be what they call the hidden homeless. So they're couch surfing and, things like that. So they're not in areas where their stats are being taken. And then of course there's people with disabilities. So basically I'm just putting it out there. We're in a housing emergency, and I'm telling people from Ontario and BC, if you're thinking that you're going to come to Calgary and live this wonderful life and you have a roof over your head right now, don't come, because what's happened is we were trying to fill job vacancies, but we didn't have enough housing to begin with. And now there's nothing, like, unless you've got a couple months to put down or a year to put down, like it's virtually impossible. Like you're going to places and there's hundreds of people. Landlords are getting hundreds of people as soon as they put the ad up that want to look at it. And it's just insane. Like it rent is slightly cheaper than Vancouver and Ontario right now, but
not by much. Yeah.
but not by much. But there's nothing, you know, affordability is only one part of the equation. There's no housing. If there's not enough housing to house everybody, it doesn't matter how much the rent is.
Exactly. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Cassandra, what you're going through.
Yeah,
if I had room here, I would say, hey, you can come and come here and stay.
I know. So, well, I'm just letting everybody know, like, I have to go and run and grab a couple wardrobe boxes and secure a storage unit, and that's why I'm not able to participate in this conversation the way I would like to today. But I hope we have
a round three. We're going to have a round table 3. So,
I'm ready for roundtable 3 because everything that you guys are saying is so important, especially when we're talking about housing, like our incomes, like, I'll go back to the whole market basket measure thing. They say it includes rent, but if you look at the amounts, damn well it does not include rent, because it doesn't even, their market basket measurement isn't even enough to cover rent in a lot of places. And so they can't be including rent in it. Whereas that's why I've always been on this whole livable income based off a living wage thing. And the city of Calgary seems to be onto that too, because they were talking about that in regards to AISH. Too bad our provincial government's not listening. But but yeah, I just wanted to put that out there when we're talking about basic income and adequate income and people having enough. I mean, that goes straight to your core housing need. The 2 top things that lone person households are most insecure over everybody else is on housing and food.
Well,
the word shelter. Yeah, the word shelter. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Brent. I was just going to say, like, with the average rent in Vancouver now is $2,500.
Yeah.
So
closer to 3.
Actually closer to 3. Sorry, you're right. And so even if you assume that everybody that's in Vancouver is doubling up, like, they're splitting rents by having somebody sharing the rent, like having 2 people share 1 bedroom or something, that's still like $1,500 each, right?
Yeah.
So that means that so that means, like, if we're talking reality, like a rent portion should not be tagged at $500. It should be at least $1,500. Like,
if it was 1979,
that should be a starting point. That should be a starting point for the rent portion only.
Well, here's the thing, Neil. There's a lot of landlords. They only want to have 2 people inside their building. I mean, I of course, doesn't really matter. I'll say this anyways. There's 2 doors down from here, down my hallway. There's some young ladies there. I mean, they're giddyish. They're nice people. I mean, whatever. They're university students, but there's 8 of them. 8 of them living in a 2-bedroom unit. Yeah. Now it is rented from a senior who. She's getting up there, but she actually technically has the unit. She subleased it off to them, and she's billing them $1,600 for the whole unit. And her rent is $785. The lady has it for $785, but she's charging them $1,600. So now technically the landlord is collecting $785, but she's billing the tenants that. But there's 8 of them living in there. Now that kind of goes back to a time when I met with our predecessor for social development poverty reduction in BC, Shane's honorable Shane Simpson, who I had on the show. And I remember in a town hall meeting, you guys, one time he was asked about the rent portion. He was asked about shelter. What are you going to do? What are you going to increase it? He said he wanted to get rid of it at that time. I remember in a meeting, he says, I want to get rid of it. I want to scrap it. because it's irrelevant. People are using their whole check, and I go, okay. So one lady asked him, and it always stuck in my mind. And Sonia and I were talking about this morning. I said, "Do you remember that time where the rents are so high? And what did Shane say?" And she says, "What did Shane say, Sonia?" You got to do what you got to do. And up to 8 people living in a household. And he says, yeah, if it takes 8 people to rent in a household, that's what you got to do. Unfortunately, it backfired on him because most landlords won't have up to 8 people. If they find that out, they're evicted or they're going to jack up their rent.
Well, legally, I think it's you're two people per bedroom is what you're allowed.
Yeah,
legally.
And these people have bunk beds in their units. I know. She told me,
Right.
You've got beds, bunk beds.
See, and even in BC, there's a law that says that for children, they have to have separate bedrooms based on their sexes, right? That's a law. So, I mean, it makes it very difficult when, with these rents and everything else. And this is one of the things that I've, been looking at is this whole thing of renting is people that are disabled should have the right to be able to go and purchase a piece of property or a condo or whatever they want to have for themselves. So they own, right? Having ownership, just because you're disabled shouldn't matter that you're disabled. You should have the right to actually own a piece of property. You shouldn't have to worry about renting, right?
Yeah. But
something I've been advocating for, and a lot of people here in Alberta on AISH have been advocating for hugely lately. So just so you know.
That's exactly it, Cassandra, is that a lot of PWD in so many cases, they can't live with other people either. So with government saying, oh, well, you gotta do what you gotta do to make it happen, having up to 8 people, I'm sorry, it doesn't always work having that many people. Maybe they're claustrophobic, or based on their disability, they can't have mass people around them. They just have to give people a livable income and be done with it. I mean, these systems are so archaic. I mean, a livable income going forward. I mean, this is DERB it.
Yes, DERB.
I don't think
I want to say before I'm going to go now. I'm going to go now, but I want to say, can we pump out that Arise letter, guys? I'm going to do some mass tweeting tonight, and if I could get you guys to help me, because we're at 112 signatures. It doubled in 2 days, and I'd like to really kind of get it moving. So if I could get your guys' help, that would be awesome.
Sure, we'll give it an amplify.
It'll encourage people it'll encourage people in my group too, because we just started, and so to have something that we did get traction will also encourage people to even want to do more, because people get discouraged easily sometimes. So
I think too, Cassandra, that a lot of people who are able but want to be advocates don't quite, they've got so much on their plate, like a single mom or whatever, but they don't think that this could affect them, that the chances of them becoming disabled are possible but very highly improbable. So the fire isn't under their feet in the same way. It's still there, but we need to kind of get the able people to go, hey, listen, we're advocating for your future, because you could be in this boat too. So
but in regards to the DERB, in regards to the DERB thing, I think we have allies, and I think if we can all reach out to the allies we know too, and try to get them to sign and them to amplify it as well, because I think that's the key. And
anyone who doesn't know what DERB is, which I'm sure most people know by now, it's Disability Emergency Response Benefit. I know I've said in a previous podcast, disability emergency relief benefit, but yes, response benefit. And I mean, when I say relief, I say, well, people want that relief now, right? But there's that response is now. So there's that difference of, terminology. But we just DERB it. We just, regardless, we just got to get it out there now.
Guys, I'm going to let you go, and I'll see you for round 3.
Okay. Yes.
Thanks,
and we'll correspond to time that works good for you. Cassandra too will work around it. So if
we want to do next Monday again, I'll be on board for that.
We can do Monday. Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. Monday it is.
And also, Cassandra, before you go,
Mondays are a good day.
I wanted to reach out to you for I know your friend Tara wanted to come on the podcast, but I'm no longer on Twitter, right? So I can't reach out to her on Twitter anymore.
Which Tara?
Oh, you got you got multiple Taras. I'm not sure actually. I think her last name started with the C, I believe.
Carlson. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Neil, if you could reach out to her on my behalf, because I'm not on Twitter anymore.
Okay. Do you want me to shoot her your email or?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
People that are
also,
not on Twitter.
Sarah from Smash Studio.
Announcement.
Sarah from Smash Studio would like to get on as well. So if you have a way, Brent, of reaching out to her, she would like to do another either a round table or just a one-on-one.
Yeah.
She did mention that.
No, she was fun the last time, so we can have her on.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Reach out to her, Neil, and arrange that. And I mean, I'm not going to speak for Neil. Neil, if you want to maybe let them know why you're not on Twitter. I mean, it's up to you. If you don't want to, that's fine.
Well, it's basically all Elon Musk's fault. He changed. They just recently changed all the privacy things on Twitter, and if you actually read all the changes, it's scary as shit. And I quit Twitter on Thursday night. I didn't even let Brent know. I just quit and I shut everything down. I made no announcement. I just shut everything down. I said I'll let Brent know the next morning, and so then Brent's like, well, "What's going on?" And so it's Elon Musk's fault. So I don't want anything to do with Twitter anymore. It's like
I don't know if they added that.
I'm back to writing on stone tablets. It's fine.
I have no idea if that's part of the Zoom, anything like that's in the Zoom TOS. So,
what happened was I had sent Neil a policy update that Elon Musk is working on. Now, from what I understand, is there's it's up to a premium level that he wants to implement in about facial recognition, ID, all that stuff. Now, I mean, they claim that it's at premium level. Now it's just a matter of time before it comes down to the Twitter level of all users. When I sent that to Neil right away, like I didn't even know, like he had just like, that's it. Like it's like fuck.
I'm done.
Yeah,
I just pulled the plug and I'm out.
Yeah. And so like I had a guest coming up on the Friday. So I had sent that to Neil and I looked at the time and I was like, okay, it's getting too late. I better not message him because I didn't want to interrupt his, like say his family time or whatever. Maybe he's just resting. And I thought, okay, I'll check with him in the morning, but I'm going to go up to the profile here. I'm going to amplify the next guest coming up, which I had on the Friday. And I click on it. And it says something went wrong. I'm like, what do I wrong here? So I'm like, okay. I'll quote tweet it. That's what I was going to do. So I popped in there. Something went wrong. I'm like, okay, I can't even quote tweet. What's going on here? And I thought maybe it was a policy. I said something I don't know. And I thought, what? And next thing you know, Neil told me. So I had made a decision. I told Sonia like about this policy stuff. So she said, that's it. I'm done. Like, she did the same thing. I went, no, you guys. Like, so I'm like, okay. So I still got my account open at the time. And so I said, well, I'm going to be crafty and I'm going to word it out. And so I reached out to you, Neil, and I reached out to our secretary to get the help of wording this, good way. Cause I didn't, I got a lot of followers and, and it really hurt me because I was thinking like for myself personally, I thought, well, I don't want to abandon my advocacy, but at the same time, I don't want to be under the rule of Elon Musk of saying, well, you're going to do this policy or else. And I thought, so I was ready to delete my my account. But then after careful thinking, I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to keep this going for now, right? I'm going to keep it going because I'm used to all the, the MLAs, the MPPs. I got a lot of them following me and advocacy going forward. And I thought like, I'm going to use it as my tool of my communication.
Yeah,
so
for you it makes sense. For you it makes sense, but I don't think anybody cares that I'm gone. So you know. So it's like,
Neil, we all love you. No.
Well, I mean, it's in Zoom's TOS as well. I mean, honestly, they're all going this way. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna come down to the point where it's like you're just gonna have, if you really want to do this, it's like set your own video system up like this and have it set up privately for members, and there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I
coming
mean,
to that
I'm
point.
gonna find the bathroom, you know, I'll still stay connected, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna be mute and screen off for about 5-10 minutes.
No problem. No problem, Alan. I mean,
Okay.
yeah. So, you know,
Look, guys, look, when it comes to expectation of privacy from apps and websites, I'm just going to speak wholeheartedly here, okay? When it comes to the early days of website building, when they first came out, okay, you had things like, oh, you know, the administrator or the server might, you know, need to, you know, go through your communications to make sure that, you know, there's not a terrorist attack or this or that, or, you know, you're not violating, you know, child pornography laws, et cetera, et cetera. Then it evolved into, you know, the apps automatically doing it themselves. Then it evolved into, you know, oh, they have staff there. And then you get into the big corporations like Twitter or, you know, X or, you know, Zoom or Facebook or, you know, Instagram or whatever. And they're going to cover their own ass. Right? With the longest amount of legal mumbo jumbo that you can think that's, you know, going to do everything from take your unborn children, you know, to, you know, your soul and, you know, possession of your soul for the next 75 years for copyright purposes. Okay. Like they're going to do anything that they can in terms of service. But at the end of the day, is the MP using it who has an entire legal team that already read through that?
Oh,
is there, you know, a violation of a civic right? Because if there is, you know, somebody like our local MP that's on that platform's lawyer team is going to find that well before we will.
Right. And a lot of the information right now that they collect, that these platforms collect, they've already got a lot of our ID already.
So my point is like, if you walk down the street, okay, you're recorded from the average of 5 video cameras when you walk down a busy street. Okay. Now, the same thing online. If person A agrees to terms of service of Gmail and person B agrees to Facebook, but integrates their Facebook into their Gmail, and then Gmail knows about person A and knows about person B, but person B doesn't know A. Do you think that that's not been challenged somewhere already? Do you think that that's not, you know, it kind of, it's odd in your mind, but that's actually perfectly normal.
Yeah,
and they need permission to do that, so they sneak it in their little terms, like we need access to your photos and we need access to this. But meanwhile, they don't really need access to your photos. What they need is your permission as a blanket that, you know, oh, they have access to that directory just in case they need to go in there.
Right, exactly, and like they've already.
But it did reference specifically. It said photo ID, and then it said biometric data, and I'm like thinking, okay, he wants my photo ID and biometric data. It's like, I'm not giving that to Elon. Sorry.
On certain apps, you can add your ID, right? Like when you know, if you're going to be a corporation on X, they probably require somebody to have a piece of ID for the credit card, because it's you know, at whatever amount per month. What is it, $1,000 or something like that for the business?
Something like that.
The gold one, right? Yeah. So they're going to need those permissions. Biometric, well, that's because I can open my phone with my thumbprint.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they need permission for that, not because they're going to keep your thing, but because the app that they designed needs a third party that bought this coverage, or, you know, they're doing this or that or whatever. So maybe they don't need it, but maybe the third party app that they built into their app that actually scans the biometrics needs permission. And so they give you the plain language permission of, well, we need your biometrics. And you're like, well, no, that's because the
Well,
third
you know,
party app
right.
way down the line needs your biometrics for your thumbprint to open your phone.
well, you think about how much you've already given up, to go, basically.
I
to
fully
live,
expect
right?
that person A has already shared information
Right.
about me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've already expected that person B is trying to take on person A because of something that I did. But you know what? Sorry.
Well,
Yeah.
I keep going back to Terminator, the movie Terminator, 1984, and that I was thinking to myself, that was a cool movie. I was like, what a cool piece of science fiction. But now it's like fast forward 40 years, it's
Yep.
like reality
Have
now.
you seen?
Oh, come
It's
on,
like
my
Have you seen
shit.
Black Mirror? Have you seen the episode of Black Mirror about the social credit score?
No, I didn't. see
yes,
it.
the episode. Yes, the
I've heard
episode
that
is
reference
called.
a lot of times as well. Yeah,
Yes, the episode.
It's like
the
Black
episode.
Mirror.
The episode is called.
Here's another
Nosedive.
show. Here's another show.
Hold
Yeah,
on, MJ, what?
Oh, sorry.
The episode is called Nosedive, and
Right.
basically it's about your social credit score, and basically the entire society becomes very vacuous because you have to practically fake your way through life. So,
Oh.
you give a props to this person, try to get likes back from that person, have a good interaction, and everything that you do is all based on a score. And in the end, it's like what happened is there's a multiplier. So the more people that go and downvote you all at the same time, the multiplier starts to get kicking in. So it goes, and the multiplier gets you.
They filmed that out here, worked on it. It was so fun.
That reminds me of a movie that I love watching it every so often. I haven't seen it in years. Remember, it was called The Net with Sandra Bullock.
Yes.
Remember that? I mean,
They did it
and
to
that
me,
was
they'll
back
do it to
then.
you.
I mean, how technology, how sophisticated it was. Just go in there and change identity, and
Yeah.
then poof, like.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of goes with like you're going to a grocery store, you go and buy some craft dinner, you go and buy a can of coffee, jug of milk. That retailer is keeping their computers keeping track of. Okay, it's not just we've now sold Brent that jug of milk. Is that you're now using that bank card? That bank card now is like now the bank knows. Okay, you purchase it. Sure, it'll say retail purchase, but internally they know what you bought. If they want to break down that, they can figure out, based on that transaction, what did the consumer buy? So now it's based on marketing. So it's like you're
This is
selling.
what worries me, Brent,
Good.
is imagine you go to the self-checkout because the corporations have gotten rid of its tellers altogether.
Oh,
you're
I
going
know.
through and you're scanning stuff and
Yep.
it goes not permitted because you're on disability. So let's say you want to buy a bottle of wine or a Christmas turkey or something, and they're going due to your social income or just not approved. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things that are coded that have been flagged.
That'd be scary.
That's what worries me. Is we get into a point where the powers to be that give us the income are saying that person's on disability, so they can't buy any chips or they can't buy certain.
You can have this, but you can't have that. Yeah,
but they sort of already have a version of that in the States with SNAP, where like the food stamp thing, where it's like, what is it? It works for some things, but it doesn't work for other things. But I don't think it's. I don't know.
Market housing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens with SNAP is there's companies that will go and fake your grocery bill for you, and they'll give you the cash back. So right?
Yeah.
And that happens with the States. This is something we found out. It's like people have said, oh, well, let's test all the people for drugs. Well, that they found out that the cost to test all these people for drugs was such a waste of money over the course of 3 years that it just served no purpose whatsoever. It just wasted tax dollars. So this is why, to me, GBI or whatever, UBI, whatever, we go with, just says, take the money, take it or leave it. It doesn't matter what you spend it on. But I guarantee you, if people had the money to spend on buying good food, they would buy good food.
Yeah.
It would stay out of the center of the aisles because they wouldn't want to go and waste their money on garbage. and wouldn't
Yeah.
buy buying crap that they don't need.
Yeah.
Well, you
Because
look at
who wants
yeah.
to be eating craft dinner, when you can actually go and make a good meal and you can afford
well,
it?
well, MJ, you look at
The bare naked ladies.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah, dollars.
We
and
wouldn't
now I
have
say,
to eat craft dinner.
if I had
Yeah,
a
we would. We
billion
just eat
dollars
more
now.
of it.
Yes.
if I had $1 billion, if I had $1 billion, I
Yeah.
could actually buy my own food source.
But not a real fur coat. That's
That's
true.
Yeah,
cool.
because you look at the governments, though. You just look at all the charities that keep giving the money to food banks, and
Yeah.
oh, look what we did, bravo! And why don't they give the money to the actual person? Then they can
Yeah.
make that choice for themselves. But no, we're giving. Oh, we've given $170,000 to X certain food company, and you look at the grocery stores. I was at Save On Foods the other day, and I saw a big bin, and I see all the groceries in there. I see some frozen stuff in there, but not too much because it's going to spoil. But then, of course, what do they do? Give it to the food banks, which they do.
Yeah.
Now that gets handed down to the consumer, rather than those same people who put the stuff in there. They bought the groceries at the at the store and threw it in the bin. Well, how about just give that money back into society, and then people now can go and buy what they want rather than having it given to a food bank, and then they need to now distribute out. Now you need to prove yourself. Why do you need to go to the food bank? Because they want you to get like a hydro bill or notice of assessment.
And Food Banks Canada is for basic income as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. So and that's where the idea of basic income in any sort or guaranteed income solves this problem, because you'd be getting enough money, you wouldn't need to go to the food bank.
Yeah.
Right.
I was also thinking, sorry, Alan, I just wanted to, wouldn't the companies that are being cut off of like, oh, they can't buy this, but can't buy that, wouldn't those companies then be like, what do you mean we got cut off? So the companies start complaining, and so you get together with that chicken company or that wine company and go, right, we're both going to talk to our MP. Yeah.
They just took our funding away.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, then the recipient goes to their ministry's office and said, "Oh, you have a crisis supplement for food. Oh, did you try the food bank? Did you try other resources first, rather than give people a basic income or a UBI? You know what I mean? Like, give them what they want, what they need, and they can make those choices for themselves rather than jumping through all these hoops and proving the reason why. Did you exhaust all your other revenue avenues?
Yeah,
I'm just a person."
And it's not economically viable.
No,
food banks aren't good either. It's like this is the point. I think I don't know if I mentioned this last time. Teresa Funicello's book, Tyranny of Kindness, where she explains how a food bank. I mean, they're great people. I'm not saying that, but it's like, but by the time that, let's say $1.50, not that it would be $1.50 now, but $1.50 head of lettuce makes it to the end recipient, it's an $8 head of lettuce, because a food bank is usually located downtown. So there's the cost of that land. There's administrative. There's plumbing. There's the guys driving the trucks, and blah, 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 blah. All the stuff to run a food bank. It goes into that. So it's like, why not just give the person the money in the first place? Give them the $8.
Yeah, it's like a supply
exactly. So this is how I managed to come up with this whole idea of $4,000, because mathematically, with all this nonsense and all these benefits and all these support groups and support services and all the rest of the stuff, you take a look at all of these things all around, and you start to realize exactly how big this infrastructure is. It's like they have an infrastructure for dealing with people that are disabled and poor, instead of actually trying, so they've got entire business around all of this, right? Around being poor,
you have to
homelessness and food and housing and all the rest of the stuff. They've created businesses and jobs around this, and that money is then coming out of the government to fund all of this for the most part, which then could be going directly to the person. And it's absolutely insane.
It's like you can chain of a whole bunch of people in between to basically accomplish one thing, where that one thing could just be handed to that person. Now they can go and make that choice.
Get
right?
exactly what they want. It's so funny. This is one of the
chains of life. Yeah, the chains.
Yeah, like one of the things it's hilarious is how a lot of people will say basic income, that's socialist. Okay, the Mont Pelerin Society, their first meeting in 1948 with Milton Friedman and Friedrich Hayek, who inspired Thatcher and Reagan, they were actually behind the idea of basic income, and their first conversation back in Mont Pelerin, Switzerland, was about guaranteed income. So, and one of the reasons was Wilhelm von Mises, he said it, which is, again, an Austrian economist. He said it. It's like a government will never be as good as ordinary people with money to spend at getting exactly what it is they want. Because that was like kind of like the kind of socialisty, central planning. Okay, so Victoria needs this many tons of rice and this much bread, and whereas the person goes, I need one of these, three of these, give me these, and their money is good for doing that. Like, why would communism give capitalism money so capitalism keeps working? It doesn't make
and you have to hope that bread's not moldy too,
but
right?
it can also be very left wing. So it's that's why I wrote that thing. It's like, it's not communism, it's a commons. A commons, which I've talked about before, and my album's called that. It's about it's something that belongs to everyone, it belongs to no one. Like a good example of a commons is a public library. It's not a barn of books. You walk in and run away with the book. It's stewarded, and there's a program, and you do it's like, it's by everyone, for everyone, it belongs to everyone, it belongs to no one. Same thing with basic income. We make it run so it helps us.
Right.
Done. That's why it's not really left or right. It's like a kitchen tap. It's just a good idea to have it.
It's like
exactly.
you can have your cauliflower. You can have
you can have 3 cauliflowers this week.
But that bread's now expired. It's a little bit moldy. But here, just cut it off then. I mean,
See,
would you eat that? No.
Well, and this is where, it's like you take a look at a lot of the stuff that's offered to you from the food banks, and a lot of this stuff, it's like pre-made, pre-canned, whatever, packaged. It's like, it's the most unhealthy food that you could ever possibly go and give to people. And it's like, you take a look at the salt content, you take a look at the fat content,
Sodium.
and it's just the level, and it's like, you're dealing with people that, if they've had to go to the food bank and they're disabled, they already have health problems. And this is the type of food that doesn't go, it's not useful to them. So putting the money back in their hands to simplify this makes a hell of a lot more sense, instead of going and having people chase around from this group to have to go over here, they get assessed over here, then they got to go over here, and then running all over Hell's Half Acre, spending oodles of money on bus passes and going here and there, and just to go all around in circles, just so they can get permission just to go to the food bank or go to this service or support or whatever. And it's like, the amount of nonsense and barriers they put into place for disabled people to go and get supports and be able to go and get the health care they need is absolutely tremendous.
Well, here's a take on that one, MJ. I remember one time where I went to a food bank. This is years ago, and the government said, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a crisis supplement for food." Right? I said, "Oh, okay. Yeah, you need to learn to live within your means." Right? Well, I already am. I mean, that's why the rates need to be changed, need to be modernized. Okay, well, you need to go to the food bank. So I go to the food bank. I'm like, whatever. And I go to the food bank, you need to have your hydro, and need to have your notice of assessment for Revenue Canada to prove that you your income's not high enough that you would qualify. There you go. Oh, there you go. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so I go there and I pick out some stuff. Okay. Now, I said, I noticed that some stuff was expired. I said, I wouldn't eat that, would you? Well, no. Well, if it's not consumptible for myself, then why are you even have it on the shelf? Well, we forgot to take it off. But the point of the matter is that I go back to the ministry. I said, this stuff's not healthy. It's full of sodium, like we just talked about. I should be able to choose the kind of food that I want for myself. Well, you have to take what you get at the food bank. And I said, but if I become unhealthy and it actually makes my health worse, and here's the thing. Well, that's why you got a family doctor. You can go and see your family doctor and they can prescribe you medicine. That's what doctors are for. And I'm going, are you freaking serious?
Oh my God.
I said this to the worker. Are you freaking serious? She goes, that's what our healthcare is for. That's why we pay health. That's why we have the best healthcare in Canada. I'm like, I went, I said, I'm done with you. I said, I'm done with you. I walked out.
Jeff Leggett, I know that Jeff Leggett just a little while ago he made the point on one of the podcasts, I think, because his church hosts a number of dinners, right, for homeless, and he says at my church, he says we cook and serve dinner that I would eat, that everybody eat. We don't just serve
Yeah.
shit. You know,
Yeah.
we make food that is edible for everyone.
Exactly.
You don't just give
That's
people
awesome.
like the
Yeah.
shit leftovers, like you
Yeah.
know,
The scraps.
the
It's
scraps.
like, it's like that's one of the things that if I have a frustration of being a
Scraps
basic
of the
income,
marmot.
if I have a frustration about being a basic income advocate, it's that I still want to do stuff in the now while we're waiting for the then, and that's really awesome. Like anything that can be done now, like, is amazing, and DERB, of course, is included in that.
Yeah.
But like me and my loved one, we went to food bank years and years and years ago, and it was like you didn't actually pick up other than breads. It like the ones in Victoria, you could pick out the breads, but they just give you this like thing.
Mhm.
And we used to have this low income grocery store down the road here, Oxford Food, which is sadly no longer with us, or it's not here anymore. And it was just so frustrating because like stuff would go bad because the food bank stuff would block it. You couldn't tell if there was something back there in the freezer that was actually good. So both would expire on you. Meanwhile, like the most common thing they'd give you is like canned stewed tomatoes, which is exactly what she can't eat. And of course, like you say, sodium's high, dented cans. I took food safe when I worked at like Tim Hortons and McDonald's, and so I know dented cans is terrible. Like, so it's like, what of this is good? And it's just,
Well, it's like when you're handling food. I mean, you wonder what like some of the stuff that these prepackaged stuff in the food banks. You're looking at some of that stuff, and I'm thinking, wow, like you got some spiral noodles, but it was already prepackaged, homemade stuff thrown into a food bank. Maybe some grandma or something thought would be helpful and make something for somebody like that, which is great. But how long has it been sitting there? I asked one lady how long. She goes, "Oh, we rotate the stuff as soon as it's gone. We replenish it." I go, but the question is, how long has it been sitting there? Oh, I have no clue.
You find like soup cans with like labels that look like I haven't seen a label like that in years.
Yeah.
Well, there was one that was there for 2 years, and I'm thinking, whoa, like that's before date. Whoa.
As long as it's not bowing up and it's got a bubble on the top of that can, it's still good. Still,
we've got about half an hour or so, Brent. I was wondering if you wanted to switch gears and talk about housing again, or tiny homes.
I would love to.
Or if you wanted to wait another.
We can.
Whatever.
I can touch a little bit on that, and when we run out of time, we'll continue on round 3. Because I know Cassandra is really wanting to talk about the rent portion that I always say shelter. That'll be something that we'll dive into, and I think each Monday, you guys, I think it would be a good our roundtable discussions, and then if I have guests in between on other days of the week, which is good, if you're all in consent with that, and we can change it if 1 week doesn't work, like a Monday, we can always bump it forward, right?
We can rotate around, like it might be a Monday where like I have a gig with Kaylee, so like, I can't make this Monday, but I'll make this Monday.
Yeah, but we could do the next Monday. Yeah, but I mean, have a roundtable discussion, because this is important to get that dialogue out as new information comes out. We can have that roundtable get together discussion of current events that are going on. I think that's good. I know that was Sonia's idea, by the way.
Well, what I'm working on I'm working on building my website for universally available basic income. And right now I'm going around and trying to figure out what the expenses are that currently exist for the current programs, right? And trying to find the actual cost for these programs is pretty hard to do with the way they do these budgets and the way they put this information out there. They make it very difficult to kind of find all the information that you need. So, I mean, so far, just at the federal side, I'm at 127 billion. Right? That's unemployment. That's child benefits, and that's pension, possibly, and Veterans Affairs, right? So that's just them. So, when we take a look at what the provincial sides for each province, and we put all this stuff together, people will actually start to see how much money we're actually spending on these programs, and the ministry offices that run them behind the scenes that are actually putting all these programs together. And then if we take that money, we pool it, there we go. All of a sudden, now we have a solution. I mean, because right now, there's no solutions. And I think the simplest solution is just giving people the money to figure it out for themselves.
all
The
they're
other thing-
doing right now, MJ, is they're chasing their tail, right?
Yes.
A lot of ministerial staff they're trying to figure things out because we're telling them, going, oh well, we've never had to do that. So now they're trying to scramble around, trying to figure out, well, what should we do? With rates. Okay, well, we'll just give, like in BC, for instance, right? Let's give $125 to some PWD, but the rest of nah. And but look what we did, right? We gave 125 increase.
Well,
Why don't
exactly. So it's
Yeah.
like when they announced that, I went and made sure that my rent was set up for 500, and I was going to be getting that automatically. And, if they go and say they're going to raise the rent amount again next year, I'm just going to go and raise the rent amount that I pay to, pay in rent. That way the maximum amount keeps going. I mean, and this is how they keep doing this, is to make you keep running through the hoops. And I think, sadly, if a federal program were to come out with a universally available basic income, most of us that are on provincial disability would say, "Va con Dios, sayonara, arrivederci, and adios. We're gone." We're closing our accounts with you. And after a probably good 6 months to a year, you'd find that there'd be all these workers and nobody to administrate, because everyone would leave. And this is what would happen provincially across all the boards. I know this is a fact. I mean, even with people that are on WCB or otherwise, or when any other program, I mean, there's so many benefit programs that are just all out there and all over the place. I think we just need to simplify this to one and say, take it or leave it, or take an X amount that you want. If you want a lot less, then take a lot less. If you want it all, take it all. No problem.
I mean, you look at seniors right now. I mean, the federal program, their GIS, they don't need permission to go to another province. If they want to go somewhere, they just go, because it's administered that way. It's not a provincial jurisdiction of having a hall pass. Can I go for 30 days? As I always say to Neil, 30 days, can I go? People say, yeah, just go. You need to go, just go. But don't they?
ODSP2 now docks you if you're out of the province for even a week. You actually got, and it's because it falls on the following month, you're screwed. Like, you think, okay, well, I've got 300 to play with. Wait, I was at a funeral or whatever, at a wedding in New Brunswick.
Right, but if you didn't
how the hell do I only have 210 now?
Yeah, but you didn't ask for permission, though. You see, I mean, my gosh,
you ask permission. You ask for permission. As soon as you mention that you have left the province, you were docked for the time you're not there.
They flag you as soon as you say that.
Punitive. It's so punitive.
And that's why I'm just going to dive into about the tiny homes a little bit with you, and we're going to discuss more of it on the next roundtable for sure. But when I say tiny homes, like how I say RGI housing would benefit so many. In your view, Ellen, how do you see that? Like, rather than people paying like 90% of their income to rent, versus if they had so much more money left over.
RGI based. I think one of the things too that the federal Liberals could do that would also win them some votes back is to say the first, because they need it, they're bleeding pretty bad. They need all the support. They need to get their base back, because if they don't,
I don't think.
We'll end up with PM. But that being said, I think as far as the housing goes, if they open the door to the tiny home movement in retrospect to the first homeowners option, where there's an incentive if you are first buying your home, why can't a tiny home be allocated to that? Why do you have to try and get some kind of grant or whatever for a $500,000 house? No way, someone on a fixed income, whoever it is going to get. And we're talking about wartime houses now that are going for 600. Why can't someone say, this is my budget, I've broken it down, here's all the documents of how much my tiny home is going to cost by the company that built it, or by the builder who's going to build it, broken down. I want a mortgage for the tiny home because I know in 10 years I can pay it out. with the amount I get to live on. So instead of my money, my 1,200 going to rent, it's going
Landlord, yeah.
directly into an account that
Yeah.
the province could go, okay, he's still renting, but it's going to his tiny house.
Right, yeah, it's
Right.
going to, or you know it's going, rather than a corporate landlord who you're just making them more richer and richer.
Right. And this
I
is
mean-
exactly, this is where I
Yeah.
advocate for home, people to be able to own their own homes or own a condo or mobile home or whatever that they own, or even a tiny home, where they have a place that they can call home.
Right.
To me, that would go and solve a lot of the problems, right out of the gate if people had the ability to go and, get a mortgage that,
Well, if the province said, we know that housing, especially affordable housing, RGI, is very far between, and it's going to take 10 years before we can get any subsidized buildings up in the sky or shovels in the ground, for that matter.
which is nonsense.
We are offering a portable home, tiny home package where your ESP can be applied to that tiny home.
Well, yeah, those tiny homes, Ellen, they can be constructed where they can be, they're tiny, but they can be made a little bit bigger too.
You can take 2 containers and have them attached. You could do 3.
Yeah.
See,
Right?
and this is where, you're right. This is where having the ability to go and own your own piece, either piece of property or like an apartment or like a modular home or modular building that's just put into a frame of a building and just slid into place, and there you go. And
it doesn't take that long to build either.
No,
and incentives for homeowners to make a bit of income. We're going to give this person a tiny home, their rent is going to his mortgage, but as an incentive, we will pay you something like $200 a month,
right?
As a sort of a landlord, a property owner benefit, that the homeowner, the person who owns the land, now has a $300-400 incentive.
Yeah.
If they participate in the land offering, and this person who has a tiny home will be off grid unless they choose to work out an arrangement with you. They don't have the solar, they don't have the compost toilet and whatever. But if you're on a well or it's what do they call them? The alleyway homes, the carriage house.
Yeah, I've seen those.
If it's going to be on someone's property and you made an arrangement, that person that owns that house with a big backyard or enough to put a tiny home gets an incentive from the province that offsets their property tax.
Yeah, exactly. They lower down the property tax for sure. They need
so not only is your shelter amount going towards your tiny home, which means it'll be yours in 15-20 years.
Yeah, of course.
Or less. But it's also the province is saying we're going to give the property owner an incentive to have that tiny home there, and then you cover both bases: the person with a disability or a single mom, who's going to be waiting 5 to 10, 15, 20 years for RGI or any kind of affordable housing anyway, because they're saying, oh, even if we put shovels in the ground now, it's going to be 5 years before those properties are done anyway. So,
it takes time to build these places, right?
That tiny home takes 6 weeks.
Those apartments.
You can build, a mobile home takes about 7 days to build, right? An actual mobile home, because it's factory from one end to the other, right?
Yeah.
And the prefab homes, the same idea. You can do once you have the factory built for all of this, we could be pumping out tiny homes or mobile homes. We could be pumping out all of what we need for housing and have these things built. It's just what the problem we have here is we have a government who says, oh, we've got a problem, but they're not looking for a solution and saying, hey, okay, here's the deal, folks. We need to go and get things going. and we need to start looking at the companies we currently have and
Mhm.
seeing how we can go and work with them to go and get their production up to 200% of what it currently is, or 400% of what it currently is for these prefabbed buildings, right? If we can get 400% and get this thing going, whatever it takes, then we can solve the housing problem within 2 years.
Oh, or less, or even less.
Or less. And we're
If I
talking
was,
across,
if I was
we're
a builder of a
across the
tiny home,
entire, we're talking across the entire nation at the same time. So this
Oh,
is
yeah.
the level of what we need to have from our government is for them to go and say, look, you guys are building these prefab buildings. We need you to figure out how to go and step this production up to 4 times. How can this be
Oh,
done?
yeah.
Right? What can we do to help you get your production up? If it's requiring incentives, if it's requiring whatever it requires, what can we do? Because the only way to solve this housing crisis is for the government to step in and say, we need to work with you to increase production by 4 times. And if that includes saying, okay, you need to train workers, we'll pay for training these workers to get them to work. They get paid a good wage, they're at work. You know, the problem we have,
but you know, it's
no
funny because
willpower. There's no willpower to do it.
when I yeah,
Mhm.
and when I talk to people, like I share the links with you about a tiny house that's on
Yeah.
YouTube or whatever, and everybody goes, "Oh, that's beautiful, but where do you put it?" And that's where this property owner incentive is really a key component to that.
Mm.
Because if I own a house and I've got maybe an acre or two, I could fit 2, 3 tiny houses on that property. But what's my incentive? If I had if I could get $300 or $200 a month per unit into to cover my property taxes, I might
Right.
be willing to turn my backyard into a tiny home community. Maybe not 20 of them, because land is land. But if I owned a small farm that isn't really a farm anymore, but it's got 2, 3 acres,
Yeah.
if I can put 7 of them on there,
Yeah.
as a theoretically, as a hypothetically, as an owner, I'm going, okay, well, I every month I'm getting $600 a month, or I report them, and that comes off my property tax at the
Yeah.
end of the year when I.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll get like
There needs
Neil
to be a kickback. I
Neil
have
could
friends that are
probably give you
landlords. I have
Neil could probably give you an example of an equation of the rents are like in certain areas $3,000. You know, just for instance, like a 1-bedroom in Vancouver, 4,000 for a 2-bedroom. I know we were talking about this one day, Neil. Like as an example, in 1 year versus 10 years, kind of break that down, and then I'm gonna talk to, and I'll move it over to Joseph for a few moments regarding the amount of population that's come into the country, and then we'll do closing comments, and then get Tom to do a little exit of a. But remember what we were talking about, Neil, is about. Remember the equation? I was like, say $3,000. Imagine for market rent, and then in 1 year versus 10 years, and then what do you got left? I mean, versus if it was a tiny home,
right?
Yeah. So I mean, in comparison, I see. I mean, Alan, you got this nailed, man. Like I really like.
There needs to be an incentive for the government to say, instead of paying rent, we're going to buy you a tiny home.
Yeah.
But we're going to take $1,000 a month off your ODSP or your PD, whatever. What's it in what is it in Vancouver, Brent? It's PWD.
Yeah, PWD.
Okay, so if you're getting $1,600 a month, 1,000 of that is going directly every month to your tiny home until it's paid off, and then you get your full amount back, because so in 10 years you now own a tiny home, and now there are property owners out there going, hey, we're an elderly couple and we really can't cut the grass too much, but if we had someone on site, we'd be willing to give there, but we need to cover our property tax. So if the government, the same government or another government choice, if the federals and the provinces got together and said, okay, we're going to split this responsibility. We're going to make sure that that disabled person or that single mom that was trying to get RGI We're going to give them a tiny home. They're going to have it in 8 weeks. It's going to be built to their specs if they're in a wheelchair or whatever the case, and the property owners have an incentive to have you somewhere.
Okay, that sounds great. So
And a shuttle bus.
Yeah, there we are.
Because the alternative is like you've said, Brent, is like, you know, the average rents now in Vancouver are $3,000 a month. So times that by 12 months, that's $36,000 a year.
Yeah.
You know, so in 10 years,
oh my gosh,
you've already spent $360,000, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
that's a shitload of money for 10 years of
tiny homes that could be bought in time frame. But you know, and you look at what the shelter, like, I mean, and that part we're going to dive into the next roundtable is we'll be talking about the shelter thing. And I know Cassandra, I mean, I'm really eminent about that, getting rid of that. I mean, the former minister wanted to get rid of that too. And I noticed what goes on in Ontario goes on in BC. A lot of the same policies, and we kind of dived into that too before. But
I'll throw a figure at you quickly, and then for me in a bachelor, in 12 months, I have spent $15,100 on rent.
Wow!
In 1 year. Now I times that by say 10 years, right? Because I said 10 years.
Yeah.
That's $151,200. That's enough for a tiny home, and that is not a cheap bottom end DIY. That's a company like the ones in Montreal or the ones in the States.
Yeah, that's huge. That'd be a huge tiny home.
You could get a 20. You know, for that type of price, you could get a 20 by 30, maybe 20 by 40. You know, small modular, house or space for that price. I mean, that's the insane part of, if we were just given the money, we could go and, say, oh, well, I can afford to buy this and I could live here. Right?
Show me money. Show me.
Another thing from basic income kind of stuff, and I'll just put this in there, is also have stuff like land value tax as opposed to property tax, and going after and getting speculation and rentierism out of the way so that it is easy to keep these costs low. Also, they had the thing in Finland where they helped people with getting housing. I'm thinking, well, listening to this, and I'm like, well, what if the provincial government wants to stop having unhoused people, and I imagine they do. Why not do the same thing they do with a lot of other charity things? Meet people halfway. If it costs like $1,000, right? We'll cover 5. You cover 5. Rock and roll. Like there's all kinds of stuff you can do.
Well, exactly. And simplification is really the answer in all of this. And the problem is when you really look at it, is the government doesn't want to simplify because they realize the truth being is that they will be getting rid of tens of thousands of government employees permanently, right? Permanently, which means, like if they're the NDP, these are union voters you're getting rid of. So you can't do this.
But at the same time, there's also the Canadian Association of Social Workers.
They don't want the status quo.
Remember the example that Jeff Leggett had when he was last on, and he said, he wanted to have one of his teeth capped, right?
Right.
And the ministry said, well, we'll pay the $700, I think it was $700 or something to have your tooth pulled, but we're not going to pay to have it capped. And he says, if you're going to pay $700 to pull my tooth, why don't you just give me the $700 and then I'll use that to have my tooth. I'll use that portion to have my tooth capped, and I'll pay the extra. Yeah. And they're like, no, you can't do that.
Meanwhile, if especially if it's like a molar or something, now you've got these other problems. You've got these other problems for the fact you had your tooth pulled, so now they have to pay for this over here.
Yeah, it's just like it's so stupid.
I'll give you an example, a quick example on that one, then we'll go over to Joseph. But okay, so this is going back some years. So when I was living in Langley, I had to go over toward White Rock, so I went over to White Rock Dental. Okay, I don't care if the government hears this or not, because it basically throws them both under the bus. So here's the thing. I had to get a lot of dental work done, which I still do. I got put off because money. But so this goes over to a dental plan. So the dentist says, okay, Brent, hey, he was a guy, he was a comic. He should be a comedian. I mean, like, really, he was like such an awesome dentist. Now I'm scared of dentists. But anyway, he says, I bet, Brent, I bet you want to put me right in the chair that you're sitting in right now. And I'm sitting way back like this. I'm sitting back on an angle here, and how the chairs kind of tilt back. He said, you're looking at the instruments. I bet you want to play with those, right? Put the dentist in the chair and go, hey, how does this work? Hey, Brent. He goes, I go, you're starting to scare me, Doc. He goes, well, what I'm trying to say to you is my job as a dentist is I need to save the teeth, not get rid of the teeth. Yes. I go, but the government wants me to pull the teeth, right? I tell the government, I want to save the teeth. The government, this patient needs his teeth so he can eat properly. He can, preserve his health. And the dentist says to me, so he wrote a letter. Long story short is he wrote a letter as a treatment plan. And he said in the letter, and I didn't memorize word for word of it, but he says, as a dentist, as a surgeon, right? I mean, he's governed under surgeons and dental surgeons, whatever it is, of BC. Now he says, as a doctor, my job is to protect the patient's health and well-being. And basically the person's health will deteriorate if they don't have the teeth. So I have a dental plan that I want to re-bridge. I want to put in this and that. I want to, crown certain teeth that are very important to have. And he's going to use them as anchors to bridge over and build these things. And what they told me to do? He says, take a copy and give it to your local MLA. So I give it to my local MLA at the time, which was the government that was actually in power at the time in BC. And of course, now they're the BC United Party. They were the BC Liberal Party, but now they're the BC United Party. Magic, pink unicorns have changed the names. Just something different. But anyway, whatever, right? I mean, I'm not going to do blame game back and forth on that. But the
unicorn song is coming up later.
Yeah. So they told me, well, this seems like a really good idea. Leave it with us. Why don't you go and talk to the opposition party? At the time, that was the NDP. Now they're in government. Okay. So they said, go and talk to the health critic. And that was the NDP. So I went over to the health critic's office. They told me, well, can I see your budget? Can I see your budget? Where is your money getting paid out to see if we can maybe figure out some kind of plan for you? Even though we're not in government, did you talk to your MLA? I go, I did. And they're actually in Langley, but they told me to come and talk to you. Oh, that's kind of odd. Why would they come and tell you to talk to us? Because your health critic is now our current health critic, or our MLA in BC, which is Adrian Dix, Honorable Adrian Dix. He's the minister, right? But I went to his office, but they told me to have a plan in place of a budget. Oh, well, you could probably cut here and there to cover that cost. I go, there's over tens of thousands of dollars of work that he needs to do. And he says, Brent, unless you're going to win the 649, this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
Unless you want to be my job. I mean, we could change places. You could be the doc and I could be the patient and you're going to make my money. But reality is it's not going to happen, is it? I go, no. So the government needs to work with you. And guess what? I submitted the claim in and they came back and said, sorry, we declined your request for dental procedure because you're not going through pain and suffering at this time. And they said, but if you were, we would do it. But unfortunately, the healthcare does not cover all the other stuff that
I've got to get just a second. Go get your friend Bob here with the crowbar to fix your face, right?
Yeah. Why is there more care about protecting abused dogs?
Yeah.
And then there. I mean, people can get thrown in jail for abusing a dog or a cat.
Yeah. So the dentist says, so they turned it down, and he was so mad because he actually had got the feedback. They called me, so I went in because they actually got to know first. So I went in, and he goes, so basically they want me to rip out every freaking tooth of your mouth, basically, and then they'll say, sure, you can have a pair of dentures, but we're only going to cover one, not both.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God.
And
He
the
goes,
cost of dentures.
oh, he says, he said, we got to get them in here on the same page there, bud. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is give people a livable income. They can make their healthier choices. They can try to protect their teeth. Well, what it was, I mean, when I was a kid, my dentist, he's retired now. So if he heard this, he'd be like, God, Joe, how could you say it? But he would mistaken as a buckle on a tooth. He would think that it was a calcium buildup. He thought it was a cavity. So he started filling teeth. And guess what? Over time, they fragment and they break off. Well, I was eating one time, I was eating a banana. I mean, you're supposed to eat something healthy. Eat a banana, sure. No, eat an orange. I had an apple. All of a sudden, crunch. Oh, that was kind of crunchy. Hey, that apple's not supposed to be that crisp. Well, guess what? I'm crunching down on a freaking tooth. Oops. Go to the dentist.
And this is where, the idea of being able to, have direct access to the health insurance.
Yeah.
Right. It would solve a lot of problems. This is where, with my idea of universally available basic income, you'd have that option to be able to opt in on the health insurance, which would be part of the group insurance, and the group insurance would operate probably between multiple different health insurers, or we'd create a new one. Either way, I don't care how we'd solve the problem. The problem, is this is just a prime example of how the government keeps getting in the way to go and decrease somebody's health even further when they're on disability or they're disabled. Make it so that in the end they're spending even more money on this individual in their health care and years down the road.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's a prime example of that, that equation of what I mentioned. It's and I mean, other people going through a lot worse than what I'm going through, I'm sure, but it's a situation where it could actually be easily solved, and it's not.
But the powers to be don't want it solved. They want the status quo.
Yeah.
Jack Layton said to me, the reason that there are so many people who are homeless and so many people that are not eating and being fed and housed is that there's too much profit in poverty.
Yeah.
Remember what hardcore?
That was Jack Layton, right?
People, Neil.
Yeah, it's
how many jobs would be lost?
Deadbeats. Yeah.
How many jobs? How many jobs would they be lost?
Yeah.
Right? How many jobs would be lost in the entire system? We've mentioned food banks already. We've mentioned workers in the government multiple times. I mean, then there's the job assistance programs with like the employment services branches, the offices, the job banks. You've got, in all these other programs and all these other things that have been put together because you got to go and have this government and these nuances and all the rest of the stuff to sit here to make things even worse for people.
Yeah, and then the government basically gives these nonprofits all this money to do research to determine, well, how do we make it more accessible? I mean, you look at hundreds of thousands, and then it adds up to millions and millions and to hundreds of millions. And then I go, oh my God, all this money. You can imagine all the money that's getting paid out in all these other organizations where it can go into the hands of a person with a disability. And with that being said, I'm going to move it over to Joseph. As much as I'd love to hear all these more of our discussions, we'll go into more of that in the next segment.
Joseph gets the last word.
Yeah. So Joseph, so we got the latest stats I was reading. I've been reading in depth. So there's 450,000. This is going to blow people's mind. There's 450,000 people that came into Canada as immigrants, and then there's asylum seekers where there's 1 million. That's right, 1 million that they can't track. They can't track. How can you not track 1 million?
Not only that, but hold on. There's not only that, but there's international students that they haven't been able to track because the schools are bringing them in through provincially, right? But here's the thing. There was a recent report just yesterday that said if it was not for immigration, we would already be in a recession. Yeah. Yeah. I was actually immigration may have very well saved our economy because of the amount of people that were generating jobs and generating income versus the amount of people that wouldn't be. Right,
but it's not generating the GDP though, right?
Yeah. So we have to remember we're now over 40 million, right, as a population in Canada. But during the last census, there was only 38.9 million. So it's over 1 million just since the census 2 years ago.
Right.
So,
which is insane.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And it very, very well have saved our economy because of the amount of immigration that was coming in. Because they have to, and I'll tell you why. Children 0 to 14 years of age that are not working age, only 15.6% of our population.
Wow.
That's
now
insane. That's
working age, which is 15 to 60 or 65, right? When I'm looking at the demographics, they break it down by tens, right? Fives or tens. So up to 60. So between all of them, 22.8 million people are working age out of 40. Do you know what that leaves you with? 9.9 million seniors over 60. So that's 25% of our population. 1 in 4 already over 60. And another 13% that's between 50 and 60.
My gosh.
Yeah.
Right. And this
So
is why
in 10 years, we are going to have over 38% of our population will be over 60 years old.
And then when you see
only
when you
15% approaching.
Yeah.
We need
45.
immigration because we don't have enough children to keep filling all the jobs that we have created. We as a society demand jobs. Well, those jobs need to be filled. Well, you can't fill those if you don't have the demographics and don't have the population to do it. And so we got people, and Canada was built on immigration. No offense, unless you're Aboriginal and unless you are, Native Canadian that, goes back 200 bloody years of heritage. Guess what? You're a descendant of an immigrant, so stop complaining. My entire household is descendants of immigrants, one generation removed.
There's a lot of immigrants in my building. Some really super nice people, and the stories that I get to hear, and some of them are disabled, some of them are seniors, some of them are just working, just working individuals that are just doing the best they can. But they all tell me the same thing, like Canada can do so much better. And this is coming from some other people from other countries. They say economically they need to be taking care of their citizens that are here too.
So when you look at the demographic numbers, right? The reason why I have a problem with universal basic income is just because of the gross cost, right? The upfront cost of it. No offense, but for those 22.8 million working age, not the retirees, not the children coming in, just the working age population, that's $500 billion a year for $2,000 a month. $1 trillion a year for $4,000 a month.
Wow.
Our federal budget is 400 to 500 billion for the entire federal budget.
My gosh.
So when we propose a UBI at $2,000 a month, you can expect it to exceed 1.5 times the federal budget up front. Now, yes, MJ is correct. There's going to be a lot of programs that are going to be clawed back. There's going to be a lot of savings from administrative and things like that. The thing is that upfront cost is what the politicians are just not going to do. They're not going to deflate the dollar without the outlook and the numbers to support it afterwards. And the economists don't really want to give that because they're more profitable off of poverty. So we're at a catch-22 there. We need a stepping stone. And that's what GLBI is. It's a stepping stone. The Canadian economy isn't enough dollar-wise to catch everybody up to poverty line. It just isn't big enough yet. But if we have a GLBI and a stepping stone, so maybe the first 5 years, we're going to bring it in on scenario 1, where only 8 to 10 million people in Canada are going to qualify for it. because of the 50% clawback. But then another 5 years down the road, we'll go up to scenario 2 and include the whole middle class and more people. And then another 5 years later, we'll go to scenario 3. And then another 10 years later, we'll go to universal. If we did that, the politicians and the parties may get on board with that. But to do it slam dunk in 1 year at $1 trillion, I mean, I just don't see the politicians selling that.
See, and that's
the
why
whole federal budget is 500 billion. When the whole federal budget is 500 billion, you cannot sell a program that's twice the entire federal budget when we can't even give 2% of GDP to our military without it being a hot topic. So we need to make sure that we get that stepping stone with DERB and with GLBI and with, if we did a UBI at $500 a month, that's $125 billion just for the working age. Now you're talking $200 billion just for everybody at $500 a month. And what's going to happen with that? If you give it universally at $500 a month, the landlord's going to raise your rent $200. Your groceries are going to go up 50. Your hydro bill is going to go up 30. Why? Because they know how much of a percentage of your income they can increase it. They know that if you're going to get that extra $500 a month, everybody's getting that extra $500 a month. Where with GLBI, your landlord doesn't know if you're actually getting it.
Okay.
Right?
Right. Yeah, that's it.
Your social worker doesn't know where your income is coming from because it's GLBI, it's guaranteed livable basic income. Everybody gets it. There is no stigma against it because it's one general source. It's the federal government of Canada on your payslip, on your direct deposit form, not, ODSP, where the landlord goes, oh, well, you're disabled, so I know in 10 years I'm gonna have to put a lift in, or I'm gonna have to do stairs, or I'm gonna have to do some kind of form of accessibility, so I don't want to rent to you. Because I know for the next 10 years, you can't do a pay raise because I know the government's not gonna raise your check, so I know you're not gonna raise your rent. The other thing, the problem with rents, and the reason why rents are so high is because people have the mentality that, oh, hey, inflation's 4%, so I need to raise the rent 4%. Well, now you're raising the rent 4%. Well, guess what? That is 30% of the person's income. So now you just really raised it 12% inflation. And this is where the problem has gotten out of hand, is that our rent increases have gone up exponentially over top of our income raises. And so now we've driven it to the point where the federal government or the provincial government or whatever can't even afford to take care of the rents for the people anymore because they're so expensive. Because people expect that inflationary is going to be equal value to the rent that it is to the groceries.
So this is why we need a part 3. So
and just to do a rebuttal on that part, Joseph, is so this year, the rent increase for any tenants that are currently in their current units, it's gone up 2%. Okay. So if for 2023, the government in BC just announced, I think just about a couple months ago, they announced that for 2024, for January 1st, 2024 onward, it's going to be going up, rent's going to be going up for current tenants in their units up to 3.5%. Landlord BC this year, they wanted it to go up to what inflation rate was at 6.9%. Next year, it was actually, I guess, the same thing. Now they got mad.
And they're nuts for doing it. They're nuts for doing it.
I know.
We just sit here and say that inflation is, inflation is everybody's problem. No offense, Brent, but if you need an extra dollar to afford something tomorrow, right, you're going to ask for an increase that's going to cause inflation. Same thing for the person who got wages, right? They ask for a wage increase, that's inflation. Inflation is the increase in the value. It does not the demand for that value.
Well, they wanted the inflation to go up. The landlord BC wanted the inflation to be up at 6.9, and the government of BC said no. They said we'll keep it at level. Yeah.
Because the more that you have a rent increase, it's exponentially more than just the inflation that a person gets on their paycheck. Listen,
Yeah.
when I was working my unionized job before this office work, right?
Yeah.
3% raise every year was always negotiated for us. We'd always get 3% more, right?
Yeah.
Inflation 6.7.
Yeah.
But my contract's always 3%.
Right.
Now, you think maybe I should just quit my job, move on, right?
Mhm.
I've made a career out of this for 10 years.
Yeah.
And everybody's at the same rate. It's a collective bargaining agreement. It's not
Right.
like, I get to pick and choose my rate. So do I give up my career, and do I tell all the other thousands of people that do it to go give up their career just to move on?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what's actually what we're gonna do is we'll on the next round table we're gonna dive into about vacancy control. But I'll quickly before we dive into that on the next session, I'll end the comment on this one, then we'll do closing comments. But what is your view on it? And then what I'll do is I'll continue on the next round table and we'll continue on that topic. But what is your view on vacancy control of a current tenant in a current unit? So if I were to say move, okay, to another unit across the hall in the same building, now my unit becomes vacant, and now
I think it should be perfectly legal, and I think it should be perfectly mandated by every single province in this country that you need to provide proof of what the last tenant was paying for the unit.
Right, because I can give
you need to provide proof. You need to provide either the lease or a receipt showing what they paid. Proof.
Right.
Not just look at them and say, "Oh yeah, they pay $2,200 a month, so I'm going to give it to you for $2,300 a month."
I'll give you an example.
No. Yeah. Proof.
Yeah, I'll give you an example though.
By either a registry or proof, right? So this way, the tenant makes sure that they don't overpay.
Yeah, because I'll give you an example. I had some other young little punks that, well, they got themselves evicted because they refused to pay the rent, so they like to party up. So I mean, that's it. I mean, they're young. They found out the hard way. But of course, the management company, they loved it. They loved it because hey, they were only paying $1,250. Now they were only paying, I mean, which is too high anyway, in my view. So they moved. And they did no work on the unit. No. They just buffered up the wall, sanded it down. No painting, just buffered it up. And went up to $1,600. $1,600. Now the guy I bumped into, and I bumped him one day, and I guess he knew somebody in the building. I haven't seen him ever since. He says, "Hey, how much did my unit go for?" I go, "You'll never guess, man." I goes, "Well, Brent, can you please tell me?" I go, "Hey, you didn't hear it from me. Management would never admit that. $1,600. Say what?" I go, "And they did no work on your unit. They told me they were going to be doing work on my unit." I go, "They lied. They changed the lock though."
Shocker.
I go, they can classify that by changing the lock. That's full renovation. Bada bing. And now they can use that as a business expense for as a deductible as renovations.
See,
So,
this is where ownership makes a lot more sense.
That's because they get away with that. That's because they get away with any business expense to say that it's a renovation, because there's no defined word of renovation. Like, how much do you need to increase the value of the property for count as a renovation? That's the kind of laws that they need.
Well, we pay $1,412.70 in our unit. Okay, they nickel it right to that penny. I mean, my God, like, couldn't you not round it down? But no, they can't round it up. They're not legally allowed to go up. So like that weird amount next year is going to be a weird amount. It's going to be like 13 cents. So how do you divide that 13 cents in half? I mean, one person's going to be
two.
Yeah, I mean, but the government's going to be all confused on that. Going to say, okay, so I guess one person's going to pay 1 penny more, one person less. Like, yeah.
Well, this is where the whole rental thing really is not beneficial to, in a way, it's not really beneficial to society. You know, in the long term, property ownership makes, or unit ownership or owning a mobile home or whatever, or a condo or whatever you own, right? Makes a lot more sense.
But we move out of here, MJ. If we move out of here, they're going to get $1,750 for this unit. That's the going price right now. And when I asked,
I know.
When I asked the management company, I said, So are you firm on that? Well, that we want to get the most potential amount for our stakeholders. So that's what it's about. And I said, I see. So if you can't rent it, if it's sitting vacant, are you still making money? Absolutely. Or making money on the value of the actual land. So what the assessed value on paper, what it says, and so we use that as we can put that money into investments of saying, well, that's the money. So we can borrow on that amount and we can now reinvest into other properties.
Yeah.
And then when a tenant now moves into there, if the market value in the geographical area needs higher, we can actually go even higher than that, 1750. I said,
Well,
okay.
I mean,
So
and
they said,
you know,
yeah, sorry, I'll quickly, one more quick comment and I'll pass it over to you. Well,
I was going to say, Brent, I'm going to lose my studio pretty soon. So I think your comment should be the last comment and then we'll punch out with some song. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I'm actually about pretty well done with it, but I mean, there's another unit in here. It's going for over 2,000. So I was shocked, but yeah. So Tom's going to play us a tune to end the segment. Everyone has any last comments before we go over to Tom, and then we'll go to round 3 next week.
Let's
Money for nothing.
I got
that one, but
let's play it out.
I was thinking I did one DERB song, so here's the other one. Crack that whip.
There you go.
Give the brother slip. Step on a crack. Break your mama's back. When the bullets come along, you must serve it, or the creeps are out too long. You must serve it, and then something's gone wrong. You must serve it. DERB it. Into shape. Shape it up. Get straight. Go forward. Move ahead. Time detected. It's not too late to whip it.
DERB
it good.
It's just DERB it. DERB it good.
When a good time comes around, you must DERB it. You will never live it down unless you DERB it. You know, get the shall they DERB it? I said DERB it. DERB it good.
DERB it good.
I said DERB it. DERB it good. There we go.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today, and stay tuned to round 3 coming up next week. And each week we're going to be, unless there's other change, where we keep going up to different rounds and our roundtable discussions. If you would love to come on to our show, reach out to myself, weatherman.langley@gmail.com, or you can reach out to Neil and
I'm at neeljm.nm@gmail.com, and I'm not on Twitter. I'm writing on stone tablets.
Stone tablets.
It's what don't 10.
Stone tablets for me.
It's like
Anybody's ever watched Mel Brooks' History of the World?
And please, everybody,
this guy
don't forget to
brings
sign
down the
DERB
3 tablets and drops one.
And Joseph has a comment for everybody.
Don't forget to sign the petition at DERB.ca. There's 2 petitions, 3 actually, 4519, 4550, and 1 with New Mode Media.
Thank you very much, and Joseph and everybody for tuning in today. I look forward to our next discussion. Reach out. You want to be the next guest
Send me the
on the show
details.
in between the basically the roundtable. Definitely would love to have you on, and stay tuned for our upcoming guests.
Yep.
And that'll be a surprise.
I'll be in for the next one.